All right, before we get into what the different ideologies believe, let's talk about how you get your own ideology. Like, how do you end up where you are? And we're going to call this process political socialization. So, political socialization is pretty simple. This just means this is the way that people develop their own political opinions. Like, that is a very simple definition. What's more important for us to figure out is what causes that. So, the main sources of political socialization, these are the three textbook answers here, are family, media, and school. We'll start with family. No matter what, family is most likely to be the dominant factor in developing your own political opinions, and that works either way. So it is possible that your family talks about politics a lot. They express their values and their beliefs. They tell you what policies they like and all this kind of stuff. And you absorb that. You trust your family's judgment and you make your family's beliefs your own. It's also possible that you disagree with your family a great deal, that your family makes their value system clear, and that your family talks about what policies they support and things like that, and you reject your family's political attitude. But either way, it's likely that your family is the dominant the dominant source of your political socialization. Like, that is how you learn about the issues and how you develop your opinions about those issues. The media is another one of those, and this is all about how you get information. This is a much more active process for you guys as young people than it has been for anybody before. You're growing up in a world where all information is coming to you from the internet, and you are making active choices about what information to absorb and also what information to reject. People much older than you, like poor me, we grew up with you watched the TV news because your parents turned the TV news on. And so some of that information is forced upon you, but you guys get to make choices. There are probably a lot of issues you know zero things about, and there are a ton of issues that you're probably experts about. But the information that you get from the media, I'm sure that there are people that tell you about the issues and also give you cues as to how to feel about those issues. And that is another form of political socialization. And the third one that's super important is school. School has a tremendous impact on your political opinions. And the most obvious way that that is possible is this class. This is on your way out the door. Here we are just a couple months from you guys being done with school, but you're learning about the government, you're learning about the institutions, you're learning about the issues, and you are learning from me. It is weird to think about, but at this point in our year, I have probably talked to you guys about politics for about 100 hours, which is an insane amount of time to think about, and is probably as much or more than anyone else on the earth except your parents. So, kind of the same way that your family will impact your political opinion, I probably have some of that impact too. And it's the same thing. You may think oh, Rakestraw seems pretty reasonable, and here's how he thinks about this and this, and so you absorb some of those ideas, and you also may think Rakestraw is a lunatic, and he gets up there and talks crazy for 45 minutes and reject everything that I say. When we talk politics, we can't help but share opinions with each other, and whatever you guys do with that, whether you absorb it or reject it, that is an important part of developing political opinions on your own. So family, media, and school, those are huge. Now, obviously, I'm not the only part of school, but this has happened along the way. And history classes and things like that, or we learn about different issues in different classes. All of school has worked together to help you form your political opinion over the years. Now, there's other sources too, and it's not necessarily true that these have less impact, but for textbook answer purposes, we're going to count things like religion, peer groups, history, things like that. Those definitely impact your political socialization too. You guys are all born in the couple of years following the craziest terrorist attack that had ever happened in the United States. So you grew up in a world where national security is like very, very important. And that's different than the world that I grew up in, where we didn't have these same fears. And so, like, those values have an impact. Obviously, your peer groups would have a huge impact on your political opinions and what issues you care about and things like that. And of course, like, I think it's weird that the book says religion, is not really one of the main influencers here, but for a lot of people, it is the main influencer. Um, religious beliefs to some people are the most important beliefs that they have, and to other people, they're not that important. But, to a great number of people in this country, religious beliefs are one of the main influencers of political attitudes and political ideologies. So while we're talking about ideas and ideologies and stances and all these kind of things, let's talk about issues a little bit. We want to focus on the difference between issues. So what we're going to look at as we get into these ideologies is we're going to have to understand that there are a lot of issues out there that people don't have a strong opinion about. Here we are, we're more than halfway done with our year. I know I have assigned you guys to write your opinion about different political issues, and some of them, like, you don't care about at all. And some of them, like, you're really, really passionate about. So the same thing is true with every single individual person and, like, the stances that they care about in politics here. So there's a lot of stuff that, like, in general, people aren't going to care a lot about. Like a foreign trade deal. Very few people get, like, their blood pumping thinking about foreign trade agreements and things like that. But there are other issues that people have very intense opinions about, like abortion rights. That would be one of the, one of the things that drives people to act the most. We've talked a lot about protesters in town, and I'll tell you guys how, I'll pass protesters in front of an abortion clinic in town on my way to work every morning at 6:30, sometimes in the rain, often in the cold. If you are protesting something at 6:30 in the morning, you care a great deal. And so those are the kind of issues we're going to focus on today. Those are the kind of issues that we call culture war issues. Now, there's no real war going on, obviously, but the culture war is this idea that there is a conflict between groups and that they're always, like, struggling with each other to, like, be able to, like, show that their value system is dominant, like their beliefs and their practices are dominant. So culture war is basically a fight between liberals and conservatives about the way of life. And so this is going to center around the ideas that people are super passionate about. We don't have culture war fights over, like, trade deals. We don't have culture war fights over, like, the details of regulations and a lot of these really boring things that we've talked about this year. But we have culture wars about political issues that people feel like are central to their value system. So, like, traditional culture war issues would be things like gun rights and abortion and, like, immigration and gay rights, drug use, poverty. Those are the kind of things that have been the focus of the quote unquote culture war for decades now. These are the issues that people get really passionate about. These are the kinds of things that people are likely to, like, organize and protest over. And in a lot of cases, this is how people choose their votes. These are the issues that people feel intensely about and they're very passionate about. So in today's politics, it's like we can't help but be, like, consumed by the culture war. It seems to, like, dominate politics now. And a lot of that is because of the internet. And a lot of that is because, like, we're all choosing the news that we, like, watch. And so when we choose the news we watch, we choose to, like, follow issues that we're passionate about. And we're not all, like, getting on YouTube to find out, like, what is in this trade deal, what is in this international agreement, and, things like that. But we are watching videos to find out about the issues that, like, make us angry or passionate. These like fights between liberals and conservatives, they get, like, pushed into the forefront of political discussions, and we're always going to hear the attitudes and the voices from those people on the extremes. So like we talked about earlier, because those people are the most interesting to cover, they're going to get the media attention. So we're going to hear from like very liberal people, and we're going to hear from very conservative people. And we're almost never going to hear about people that are like moderate and somewhere in the middle. Especially in the last few years with Trump, like Trump really like to stoke the culture wars, which is typically a thing that presidents have avoided. Presidents don't want to just go out and get people fired up and all this kind of stuff. Presidents like focus on the like boring day-to-day president business. But this really, like the few years under Trump, really brought these culture war issues to the center of policy discussion, and there would be a bunch of policies that focused on these type of issues. So kind of the issues that we'll focus on in like modern times, we'd be talking about how are people behaving during the national anthem? Like, are you protesting during the national anthem? That sounds to some people like the most important issue in all of politics. Cancel culture is one of those things. When someone gets quote unquote canceled, is that the biggest story in the news? Things like abolishing the police. Those are issues that like mainstream Americans, if I go back to that political spectrum, those people in the middle are not thinking about this kind of stuff. But people on the far left and the far right are. The rights of trans people has become a culture war issue. These last two will seem crazy, but they have become the center of the culture war. The government's response to COVID has become a culture war issue. It's why we have people get into fistfights at the grocery store about having to wear a mask. That shows that people are passionate about like what is basically a very minimal policy. And religious freedom rights, which will overlap with some other culture war issues like gay rights and non-discrimination and things like that. But religious freedom rights, like we've talked about in the last unit, have gone a long way to get into this culture war zone. All right, I want to talk about ideologies for a few minutes here, and I want to start with the most popular ideology in America. Definitely very exciting. Let's talk about the moderates. Here we've got a bunch of moderates. They look pretty passionate about stuff, so let's figure out what exactly we would say about moderates. All right, talking about moderates, let's take a look at Joe Biden and John McCain, a guy who's barely a Democrat and a guy who's barely a Republican. They just hug each other and they compromise and they say, man, I can't believe that other people can't just get along like we do. But moderates, if we're trying to summarize what they'd say, moderates are going to have some liberal ideas and some conservative ideas. Moderates are going to be like the biggest group in America. About 40% of Americans consider themselves to be moderate. They don't agree with people on the right wing, and they don't agree with people on the left wing. They think we should have a lot more compromise, and that ideas should basically be a compromise between the liberal version of things and the conservative version of things. Now, this is like moderates have been the biggest group for a long time, and probably will continue to be the biggest group. But people aren't really like passionately moderate, and the number of moderates, the number of people calling themselves moderate, has been decreasing for a long time. This has basically coincided with when people started getting their news online instead of from passive sources like the television or the newspaper. The TV, you turn it on, they tell you the news. The newspaper gets thrown at your door, you read it, it's the news. But when people choose the news and the information that they receive, people are tending to become more conservative and more liberal. All right, these are the most important facts about moderates right here. These are the 3 things that we should learn. There are so many of them. Like, there are more moderates than there are liberals. There are more moderates than there are conservatives. They can be swayed. They have some liberal beliefs and some conservative beliefs. So, like, If you're a politician, that's the group you should appeal to, and that is exactly what politicians do. That is why Joe Biden is a successful politician. It is why John McCain was a successful politician. They are able to appeal to people that are in the middle, and that is where most of the voters actually are. All right, so that's it for moderates. That is an important group for us to think about during elections, but we won't really spend a lot of other time thinking about them. Right now, we're going to shift our focus and talk about what it is exactly that liberals believe and what it is that conservatives believe.